What is up? Welcome into this special edition of Pushing the Pile. I'm Mike Renner. He's Kyle Long, and we are very happy to be joined by the one, the only, Matt Ryan. He'll be joining us every single Monday throughout the season to break down all things quarterbacks. And boy, after this week one, do we have a lot of quarterbacks
for you
to talk about. So how you doing, Matt? How was your debut there last night? How'd that go for you?
Day was good, man. It was wild to be in the studio. It was my first time doing halftime updates. And so, trying to keep your eye on all of the games in that first half. And then I honestly, I was swimming at halftime trying to figure it out. So hopefully I'll get better with that as the year goes on. But lucky to be around such a great team on the NFL today and having them kind of hold my hand through it. But I had a blast. It was a ton of fun yesterday.
Yeah, it's a different pressure from playing quarterback. It's just how the other half lives here in the media sphere. But we do have a lot of ground to cover here because we have some quarterback performances that we want your take on. None bigger, though, than the Atlanta Falcons, your former team, and Kirk Cousins. The expectations through the roof after everything this offseason that we saw, transforming that roster down there in Atlanta. But Kirk Cousins failed to meet those expectations in week one. He goes 16-26. 155 yards, one touchdown, but two picks. Didn't quite look 100% Kirk. You saw him gritting his teeth.
He's wincing right there on the throw.
Yeah, some rough throws on tape. What did you think of his debut performance?
Yeah, I mean, I thought not only him, but I thought the entire offense looked out of sync. And that's, partially due to the fact these guys didn't play much in the preseason. And I know that's kind of the way everybody has gone in the NFL, right? There's this idea that, it's not worth the risk of playing guys, getting somebody injured in the preseason. But it wasn't just Atlanta. I think you look across the league, I thought offenses were pretty sloppy yesterday. In Atlanta, the problem is they're going against, Pittsburgh's defense week one. You've got a first-time play caller in Zach Robinson. I think kind of getting a feel for the talent that's around him, understanding what the offensive line is doing. That offensive line, to me, is best when they're running the football, right? When they're effective running the football, they can get into that play-action pass game, which they didn't do much of yesterday. So, the inability to establish the run, I think, kind of set things out of rhythm for them and put them in a spot that they didn't want to be. And then, quite frankly, I think they all looked a little bit rusty. But it's early. I know everybody wants to kind of overreact and panic about, performances in week one. There's 16 more games to go. And I still believe this team has enough talent and enough good players on it, enough good coaches on that staff to get it turned around. But certainly not the performance Kirk or the Atlanta Falcons were looking for in that first debut.
Yeah, and you know what? That's a great point, Matt, talking about that offensive line. And me and Mike, we did our morning version of Pushing the Pile earlier, and you were so masterfully talking about some of the scouting reports on these guys up front for the Falcons. They're a team that's built to go smash face, run the football, get that line of scrimmage dominance, and then next thing you know, downtown Julie Brown. So I think for Kirk Cousins, it's going to be, we have to lean on this running game. You think about Lindstrom, you think about Dahlman and the guys up front who are really looking to play some bully ball. When they're back there protecting the whole time, it doesn't bode well for Kirk Cousins. It doesn't bode well for the 100%. Falcons.
Kyle, you know it too, man. If you're playing against a defensive line like that, and they know you're going to drop back, right? You got no chance. I don't care who is up front, right? You're behind the eight ball. It becomes difficult to do that. They need to run the football, and I'm sure that they're in there today looking at the film, trying to establish ways to run the football this week. Doesn't get much easier, right? They go play Monday night. They've got the Eagles coming up. The beginning of their schedule is brutal, and so it's going to be rough in Atlanta if they don't figure out how to run the football.
Yeah, the most head-scratching thing to me was, they didn't run the ball great, but they did run it a good number of times. And the weird thing was, Zach Robinson, new OC, man used to work at PFF with me. We used to heart play action all the time. He was there in your MVP season when you put up one of the greatest play action seasons statistically of all time. And we would talk about how important that is. They ran one play action pass the entire game. To me, I know Zach Robinson is smarter than that to utilize the play action pass. To me, that says that Kirk isn't healthy. It is the biggest my takeaway from that, because with what they were doing offensively, if he was completely healthy, you would have had some play action shots off of that, especially with what the talent they have. at the wide receiver position with guys like Darnell Mooney who can scoot down the football field. I don't know. That's just, I think that has to change going forward, if anything.
Well, I mean, I think about it from the player's perspective. Even if you're 100% healthy, coming off of it mentally, you're not like you're not 100% of the way there. And I think, getting through that first game, probably for Kirk coming off that injury, and then kind of seeing where he feels today, tomorrow, kind of getting through that rehab. I think just getting out there and starting to get through it is going to be beneficial for him. And I hope, as a kind of supporter of the Falcons, you hope that they get it rolling here.
Yeah, Matt makes a really great point about how is Kirk going to feel today? How's Kirk going to feel tomorrow and leading into the Wednesday practice? And obviously, a lot of questions about Kirk's lower body and the health there, but you don't know how you're going to feel until you go play a football game. He was able to do that, obviously healthy enough to be on the field, but it's what Matt's talking about. Are they going to be able to build some of that stuff into next week's game plan when they go to play against the Eagles? I think they do run the ball more against the Eagles.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it.
I think the last thing on this, too, guys, is like this is a veteran player. And so unlike some of the guys we might talk about later on, he's got this database of having played well and rebounded from adversity. And there's my thumbs up on there. My computer's, figuring it out. I don't know if that came up on the screen, but, he's got this database of playing well, knows how to rebound from these type of things. So I think he gets it, going in the right direction. I'm not overly concerned here.
Speaking of guys who do not have that database, which is, I think, so important, especially with what defenses are throwing at you nowadays, we saw 3 rookie debuts. Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Bo Nix. Neither goes for over 200 yards. All 3 struggle to get anything going down the football field. What did you see from these guys? Anything to be encouraged about? And what do you think of rookie quarterbacks starting day one and how tough it is for them?
Well, I mean, it's challenging, coming in and I said this yesterday on our show. I think the biggest challenge is adjusting to the pass rush. Like that's the hardest part of playing quarterback in the National Football League, going from college football to the NFL, is the pass rush is so much better. It's just so much faster. The blitz packages, the detail that you have to have in protection, how fast those guys get on you, how quickly the ball has to come out. That's just a hard thing to replicate. And there's nothing like going out there and playing. I will say this. I think there's positives you can pull from each of them. You start in Chicago, right? Caleb, I was actually a little surprised at how he played. I thought kind of seeing him in training camp, I thought he would come out, maybe not, tear it up and light the field on fire. But I thought he would play, efficient, get the ball out, make some plays. He looked a little scattered, a little bit all over the place. But the good thing, the positive, if you're a Chicago fan watching this, they won the football game, right? Like the defense showed up, the special teams made plays. And I think in the back of his head, he can now sit there and say, okay, I don't have to be a Heisman Trophy winner type player every time I step on the field, right? I can go be efficient, distribute the football, get the ball out of my hand, make good decisions. When I extend plays, if it's there, take it. If it's not, ditch it. They can win football games that way. And then I look in Denver and Bo Nix, and I thought early on he was kind of seeing a lot of different things. A really hard matchup going against Mike McDonald, new head coach of the Seattle Seahawks. He comes in from Baltimore, a place where they've played incredible defense for, the last seems like 30 years, right? And he's been a part of that and kind of understands how to get after quarterbacks. And I thought, the Seattle Seahawks put together a nice plan to kind of disrupt his rhythm. The one thing I'm encouraged with of Bo Nix, though, he hung tough, right? And I think that shows to your teammates. You prove the toughness that you're going to continue to get up. You're going to continue to fight. With 3 minutes left in that game, he has them down 6, right? He's given them a chance. No matter how poorly he's played, no matter how much he's turned the football over, he's kept them in that football game. Credit to the other parts of the team as well, but he hung tough. So I think that's a really positive thing for him. And then finally, Jaden Daniels. I actually think he played the best of the 3. Efficient. I think he was 19 to 24, something like that. He was efficient getting the ball out of his hand. Didn't hit really anything down the field, but he had 80-some yards rushing too. And so, to me, although it comes in a loss, I think he's playing with the supporting cast that needs to be improved. I think the Commanders are trying to build that roster. I think it's going to take a little bit of time, but watching him out there and what he did, he probably looked the most comfortable of the three to me.
Yeah, Matt, well, I will echo the last sentiment you just talked about, Jaden Daniels, the comfort level. He just looked like a guy that it wasn't like his britches didn't fit him when he was out there. But the Caleb Williams thing, I'll go back to this. Caleb Williams, obviously so much anticipation in Chicago about this guy, the chosen one, all this talk in Chicago. As good as you may be about compartmentalizing your mental and separating church and state, there's no way that you can ignore this stuff. So for Caleb Williams, we saw some of the balls sail early. The guy was juiced. He was ready to play. The issues that scared me a lot about the Chicago Bears game was the fact that they could not protect him in the middle of the football field. And as you know, when you're seeing things in front of your feet as a quarterback, your clock gets accelerated, your confidence can dip a little bit. And I saw that all too often with Chicago, whether it was on defensive line pressures or late ads from linebackers. They couldn't pick it up. They didn't handle it well enough, in my opinion. But to your point, they did win the football game, so that was good.
I think the thing to remember here is the context. These are rookie quarterbacks in their very first NFL start. It's a little different from when you were coming out, Matt, your very first NFL start. You dropped back to pass 13 times. Only had 13 attempts in that game. These guys are now asked to pass at a high level against complex defenses and asked to be ready right away. And outside of C.J. Stroud the last 4 years, there hasn't been a guy. There hasn't been a guy who's ready to hit the ground running at the NFL level. So I think giving these guys some grace, if you're a fan of one of these teams, is what I would suggest. It takes time at the NFL level.
Boys, in my first start, we had 318 yards rushing.
Hell
318 yards rushing, right? Like, I didn't do anything. I hit one pass, basically, that was nice. And
game
the rest
was over in an hour and a half.
100%, just checking it down. So, you need all of that stuff. Kyle, to just hit on your one point with the expectations for Caleb, you'd certainly feel that as a player, right? You feel the weight of everything that's coming in, and you try and compartmentalize it the best you can. But you want to go out there, and he wants to make these plays he's made his entire life, these crazy, splash plays down the field. I think the good thing with them winning that ball game, particularly with the way that he played, is like there's a weight maybe that's lifted of, I don't have to do all that all the time. The ball can just come out. It can just go to the flat. I can just check it down. I can get to one in the progression, hit something over the, whatever it is. I think that weight gets lifted when you realize.
You don't have to be Superman.
Correct. You don't have to be everything all the time. You just have to be a part of it.
100%. And we'll move on from some guys that struggled to the guy that did not. Matt's going to hand out his award for the best quarterback performance of the week right after this. All right, we had a few rougher performances that we discussed in the first hour, but there were some electric quarterback performances around the NFL. Matt, if you got to give it to one, and you do have to give it to one, who was your quarterback performance of week one?
All right, listen, I'm going to break the rules week one, but I'm going to give who had the best performance to Josh Allen. Mm-hmm. All right, and so the reason I think this is I thought he played incredibly efficient. He's got this whole new cast of characters around him. I thought he threw the ball well, but he won the game with his legs. And I think there's a chance that in the first half of this season, as they continue to find their way, that's what it's going to look like, right? It's going to be kind of that Carolina team that I played against in Atlanta for so long that was Cam Newton, right? Where it was going to be 220 yards passing, 230 yards passing, plus another 60 or 70 on the ground. And when you add up the total, right, two rushing touchdowns for Josh, 2 passing touchdowns for Josh, the total of that becomes really, really, tough to defend. My second award is going to be the quarterback who's having the best week of week one, and that's Dak Prescott, all right? Dak Prescott had himself a nice little week. He played really well, but the contract he signed, which is well-earned, right, yes, and well-deserved, I'm happy for Dak, and I thought he handled the negotiations, which is never easy, and it's always extremely more difficult when you're the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys and the microscope that's on you. I thought he handled it in a really professional way. gets paid, highest paid quarterback, highest paid player in the history of the NFL, and then goes out and delivers a really solid performance too. Dak had the best week from a total standpoint, but I thought Josh played the best on the field.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's going to debate that Dak had himself
That's a good week.
The best week of anyone, maybe in America. That man had himself a good week. But I want to get back to Josh Allen's performance because I remember early on in Aaron Rodgers' career, back when he was a little bit more mobile, he was asked, would you rather have an elite wide receiving core or an elite offensive line? He said, give me the offensive line. I can make plays if I have the time. It doesn't matter. Now, obviously, you want both. But I think a lot's been made of Josh Allen's receiving core and how they're going to piece it together. And not a lot's been talked about that this may very well be the best offensive line he's had his entire career. So if I'm going to put the question to you, what would you have rather had in your career? Would you have rather had that elite offensive line in front of you or an elite wide receiving core to throw to?
That's a tough question.
Yeah, he's got Julio out there, buddy.
Yeah,
I had some pretty elite wide receivers. Those were nice, man. Yeah. And I couldn't move as well as both of those guys, right? I didn't
also
scramble as well as both of those guys. Which, obviously I'd choose both, but to me, it has to be, the wide receiver because I just think it changes how teams play you, right? And so I think when you've got one of those elite guys on the outside, like a Julio Jones or a Roddy White that I played with, you start to get kind of more of these shell coverages, which ends up, helping the offensive line, right? You've got less guys in the box. You've got more opportunities for double teams. You get all of those things. Like, I don't even care if you're the best offensive lineman on the planet. If you're one-on-one the entire night, it's going to be tough, right? It's going to be really, really difficult to do. I love both spots, but if I had to answer that question, I think I'd choose maybe Julio.
Yeah, you know what? And to your point, you get to see a lot of opportunities in offensive linemen with nickel runs. You get to spread this thing out, and then it's like, let's find out if you can stand up to our 5-0 linemen. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're obviously going to spread you out. I remember doing that early in my career with Mark Dressman. It was to spread these guys out. We had Alshon and Brandon Marshall, Martellus Bennett. We have a lot of threats on the outside, but we're actually going to beat you in the middle of the field, and that's the offensive line. So to your point, Matt, I think that's brilliant. And to your point about the Buffalo Bills offensive line, I love it. They're in lockstep with their quarterback. He's an extension of that offensive line. He's an ass kicker. And when he pulls that thing down and runs it in the low red area, it is inspirational for the offense. And it's such a backbreaker for the defense, Matt.
100%. I mean, it is, I think he had like 9 rushes for 30-some yards, but the timing of those, right? The ones that came in the fourth quarter, when it was tight one-score ball games of him just kind of putting them on his back. He had a 4th and 2 that he ran for
awesome.
to extend that drive before he scores going over the top. So to me, that part of his game right now, I think makes him so versatile. I will say this. The one thing I was surprised seeing from them yesterday, I really thought, given the wide receiver core that we've talked about, right, maybe not having that number one wide receiver, I was surprised they weren't in like 12 personnel, two tight end sets more often, because I'm really high on Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid. I think both those guys are dynamic players. I really thought coming into it, it was going to be a bit of a different look Buffalo, right? Getting some of those big sets, maybe even extend those guys out, but having 2 of those guys on the field at the same time. But they played in a lot of 11 personnel, and they ran the football really well. They didn't have many possessions in the first half. I think they only had 3 possessions in the first half. But they were efficient running the football. James Cook had a nice game. The offensive line, like you guys mentioned, played extremely well. And I think that bodes well. And I think that's what Sean McDermott wants, right? Like, he wants a team that's going to be balanced, run the football, beat you up front, let your playmaker at quarterback go extend plays. Where I think they've got to improve as a team, and this is just me, I think they've got to be better on the defensive side of the ball. They lost so many guys on that side last year that, to me, that's going to be the area of concern if you're watching the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, we go from one elite quarterback, who has maybe the best offensive line of his career, to another that we thought might have the best offensive line of his career. But I just want your take on Joe Burrow in week 1 and what he had to deal with that offensive line, and if you're pushing the panic button on this Bengals offense after looking so inept against the Patriots defense.
Before I hopped on with you guys, I just watched, the coach's copy of their offensive performance, because, yesterday it just seemed like, man, The Patriots did such a good job of getting home. But when you really go back and look at it, that ball game's very different, right? If they score a touchdown, either on the Gesicki catch that was really close, or they fumble on the next play going in, the ball security, that to me is unacceptable. When you're going over the middle and you're close to there and you're trying to hold the ball out like this, tuck that thing in there, man. Get that thing protected. You're going to score on the next play. So I think that ball game looks, it looks really different. I'm with you. I would like to see a little bit better protection for Joe. They had an opportunity where they had a half roll. They had kind of a throwback concept on to one of their wide receivers chasing on the backside. The protection, that sieve protection, that little deal that they have on the edge where they had a tight end trying to get on the D end. If that could have just held up for a little bit longer, there's another explosive play that they're hitting behind it. So to me, they looked a little bit out of sorts. They looked a little bit rusty. But I think that ball game could have very easily been very different had we taken care of the ball in the red zone and you just hold up for a second or two on another shot down the field. We might be talking about the Bengals in a different manner today.
Yeah, it seems like every year, week one, something about the Bengals, something about that offense. They just can't get on the same page. But they also need T. Higgins back. This wide receiving core is just, we talked about, would you rather have the offensive line or the wide receiving core? They really didn't have either in this one. Jamar Chase wasn't playing a full, load of snaps. T. Higgins out with the hamstring injury. And then that receiving core is super, super thin now after Tyler Boyd walking. Really don't have a lot of guys to replace it. So if they're not healthy, this Bengals team, they really could be in trouble. In my
and it's just funny the polarity between the teams that look so greased up on week one and the teams that look so stuck in the mud. And I can't help but think, like you were talking about, it's the preseason reps, it's the continuity on the offensive line, it's the receivers being in lockstep with their quarterbacks on like a 15-yard comeback. I have to know beyond the shadow of a doubt that when you put your foot in the ground, the ball's going to be in your hands. Like you, as an MVP, can say, hey, buddy, you just get to your landmark and the ball will be there. That trust, I'm not sure is there yet, but it takes reps. I'm not writing the Bengals off quite yet because that guy, Joe Burrow, is still the quarterback. Jamar Chase is in his jersey. Anything can happen in Cincinnati.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, you look at kind of them starting slow historically the last 4 or 5 years, just kind of, taking their time to get into the season. Where I become critical is like, if you're Zach Taylor, something has to change, right? You've been doing it a certain way and getting kind of the same results early in the year. You've got to reevaluate. Maybe they have, right? Maybe they have, and maybe they just haven't found that space. But, Mike, you mentioned it. T. Higgins pulling that hamstring last week in practice. That was a massive, massive, issue for the Bengals. I think with where their roster is at, I think they're kind of walking the tightrope all season, right? They've got to have everybody out there because their depth may not be as strong as some other teams.
Right there with you, Matt. Great analysis. Thank you so much. Matt will be on every single Monday with us going forward, breaking down quarterback play around the NFL. Can't wait for it, and can't wait for some more talk about storylines around the NFL. Jonathan Jones coming on right after this. As promised, we have CBS NFL insider Jonathan Jones on the show today. Jonathan, how you doing, my man?
Mike and Kyle and Mike, I'm great. It's Monday, week one, and it feels, I just did that other pregame show with Kyle yesterday, and it didn't feel like week one. It felt like we were already in like week 7, week 8, so I'm ready to go.
I know, if only there were some storylines to get to, but I guess we'll have to scrape the bottom of the barrel for some of these things. So let's hit off the top, though. Carolina Panthers, as if things could get worse for them after that 47-10 beatdown at the hands of the New Orleans Saints. Derek Brown, we're hearing now, maybe out for the year, you're reporting?
Yeah, he could be, Mike and Kyle. And look, when you look at this, it is a meniscus. And what do we know about meniscus injuries? It's that if you need the full repair, you're done for the year with that surgery. If you just need a trim, you could miss a few weeks. Right now, it is unclear, but there is a fear within Carolina that it will have to be the full repair. And in that case, it will be the full season. This guy, I was talking with a source at another NFL team, and I said, he's their one top 100 player, and he said he's their one top 150 player. You struggle to figure out who their second best player is after Derek Brown. So it's going to be a huge, huge loss for the Carolina Panthers early this season.
Yeah, I am of the opinion that get the full repair, man. It ain't worth it. This year ain't worth it risking that knee.
There's another side of the coin, though, Mike Renner. When you are the one guy in the locker room who's a top 100 player, there are dudes who are looking up to you and saying, what is this guy going to do? How's he going to respond? Obviously, the meniscus is a painful deal, and it's something, to your point, full repair, you're out, half repair, trim out, clean up, you can play. The guys in that locker room, they're going to kind of dictate their sales based on what this guy's able to do. I hope for Derek Brown that he can get this thing repaired. But look, he's a leader in that locker room, and don't be lost on the fact that the rest of the team's looking up to Derek Brown to see how he responds.
When you get a 4-year deal, though, and especially at DT, because when you look at just the career length of those nose tackles, it's tight, man. I mean, they don't last into their mid-30s more often than not. They have a few prime years. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. Again, we'll preface that by saying that, but this ain't the year for the Carolina Panthers from what I saw in week 1. All right, let's get to another guy that got paid and just a little bit more. In fact, the most money per year in NFL history. How exactly did this Dak deal go down literally the morning of their first game of the season?
Yeah, Kyle and Mike, when I look at this Dak Prescott deal, when I was reporting on this deal, it was Sunday morning, and it was not clear that it was going to get done. We heard from Dak Prescott after their win against the Cleveland Browns, and he even said on Saturday, as he was boarding the plane to Northeast Ohio to go whoop up on the Cleveland Browns, that he thought that he was going to be playing on the final year of his contract and that they were just going to pick this back up once the season was over. Of course, Dak Prescott had sort of set his own deadline, arbitrary or not, as the beginning of the season. And then on Sunday morning, they were able to start hammering out the final details. Jerry Jones, of course, is saying, look, we didn't do anything in this deal that we weren't prepared to do, that we didn't want to do, that we weren't ready to do for Dak Prescott. So what is it? It's $240 million over 4 years. That's an average annual value of $60 million. And I don't know how much fluff is involved there because you have guaranteed money of $231 million. This is the new metric that we use in professional football, the average annual value. Before, the high watermark was $55 million, and that was Joe Burrow, and it was Jordan Love and Trevor Lawrence. Dak Prescott goes 5 above that. He didn't just go 55.1, and here's the reason for that. He signed now, so he gave up some leverage, because you could argue he could have gotten 65 out there on the market if there were enough teams competing for him, and if he had an MVP runner-up season like last year. So you had to go up and above. You know, Brock Purdy's going to be around there if he has another stellar season. So the Cowboys, knowing what the deal was, making him by far, and probably for the next little bit, the highest paid player in NFL history.
Yeah, and there's nobody, I think, who does it with more class than Dak Prescott. Obviously, he's done his part on the football field. We all know the statistical numbers that he can put out there, and they got CeeDee Lamb back, and I just love the way the Cowboys look with Dak Prescott at quarterback. But at the end of the day, it's the way that he represents their program. He represents the culture of the Cowboys. There's a lot said about the Cowboys, particularly the Cowboys quarterback. Dak Prescott's done it right. He deserves this.
I'm going to go galaxy brain here. Everyone was hating on Jerry Jones this offseason for not spending money, letting these deals go to the deadline, whatnot.
Not making any moves.
What if he planned to do it the morning of week 1 all along? You have a big road game against a playoff team from a year ago. What better way to get that locker room up and engaged than the quarterback saying being there the next 4 years? That entire locker room, after all the turmoil,
it's a lot of free dinners for all the teammates.
They would be pretty jacked up. And obviously, from the results on the football field, they were.
And you know what, Mike? On that, you know, it's interesting because if they plan that to happen the Sunday of week 1, the morning right before all those games start, you know, it was a hell of a newsy late morning for us in the news business, right? Because you had the Tyreek Hill thing, which, let's be honest, nobody planned that. But then you also had the Jamar Chase not getting the deal done. And then you also had Kendrick Lamar being like, hey, I'm playing the halftime show, which I don't know why you would announce that right then and there. Really kind of got swept under the rug. I don't know if we're going to have a segment on Kendrick Lamar here, but I just wanted to at least broach that here on Pushing the Pile.
Now, we got more contracts to talk about. Someone who also is begging for a new deal, but I think a lot of people are calling his bluff because the Eagles already called his bluff and traded him away. The Jets are probably calling his bluff and not signing him to a new deal right now, and it's Hassan Reddick, the guy they gave up a third-round possible pick
What
for.
a wacky...
What's going to happen here?
Yeah,
what's going to happen? They're
here.
supposed to play tonight.
It's wacky. It's weird, Kyle and Mike. And look, it's hard to really understand what the point Hassan Reddick is making, if I can just be honest with you, because right now he has been fined an NFL mandated about $5 million. When you take into account the 3 preseason missed games, that's about $2.5 million. When you take into account the practices and some other things, that's another $2.5 or so million. So we are at $5 million right there. Tonight, against the San Francisco 49ers, he will lose out on a game check that is just shy of $800,000. And every game after that, same deal. So he will never, in whatever contract, let's play out this fantasy world where he does show up to the Jets and he does get a contract extension and guaranteed money, and he is paid like the fantastic pass rusher that he has shown to be over the past 4 or 5 years. He will not make this money back. This is a poor, if we're just talking about just a financial decision, no emotion, no ego, this is a poor financial decision objectively. And now what you're doing, you're standing on principle. Clearly there was a miscommunication. Clearly there was some sort of communication where it was, if I show up, we will talk contract. And so he literally showed up after he got traded to do his introductory press conference. And then he didn't show up again. Maybe he thought that, hey, I showed up on the first day, so now we're going to talk. And maybe the Jets were like, no, we didn't mean like literally as soon as you walk in the door, like you got to stick around. And so right now the Jets are not going to go crawling back to Hassan Reddick no matter the outcome of tonight's game. They're not going to do it. He could help them. They know that. But until he comes into that building and they can actually do productive talks, he will not have a contract offer from the New York Jets. They're saying that, and I firmly believe them.
The best catalyst for an athlete in a situation like this is show him his team without him in HD, in 4K. You're going to get to watch a team that's extremely talented, the New York Jets, and Hassan Reddick is not going to be on the football field. And to your point, he's a great pass rusher, a guy that can really help this be a dynamic, complementary style football team. There's nothing harder than watching your team play without you when you know you could be out there. So for Hassan Reddick, I hope they can get this deal done or you can get him back in the building.
Well, we saw it just last year. Chris Jones on the sideline in the stands, Thursday Night Football, watching his team lose to the Detroit Lions. That gave him all the leverage. I don't think there's any scenario where all of a sudden Hassan Reddick has all the leverage here. But I have to go to Joe Douglas, GM for the New York Jets, and say, how did this go wrong on your end? Because you gave up a pretty sizable pick for this guy. A guy who you knew, wanted a new contract. That's why he got traded out of Philly and why they signed Bryce Huff, who was on the Jets last year. So you could have gone a number of different ways at the edge position to restock it. And truthfully, you really didn't need to restock because you just drafted one in the first round last year in Will McDonald, who barely played. So I don't know.
These pass rushers are wild, man. These pass rushers, they need to hang out more alignment, JJ. That's what I think.
They should, because when I hang out with you, Kyle, you seem to understand and know everything that there is to know about how to go about your business. And I would just say this, because the Chris Jones one is a great example of two things. One, Chris Jones and all the money he missed out on, he never made back, right? In that revised deal that he wound up getting, as great as he was, he didn't make the money back. So Hassan Reddick won't make this money back. And number two, and most importantly, Chris Jones had been with the Kansas City Chiefs for years.
Yep.
These dudes don't know Hassan Reddick. They haven't played with him before. They haven't, commiserated with him before. So while they know they could use him, they aren't missing him because they've never had him.
All right, last thing here. Bill Belichick. Joining the likes of us. All of a sudden becoming one of the preeminent sports media personalities. I have to read off this list here to see where all the places you can find them. Pat McAfee Show, regular appearances. Manning Cast, regular appearances. Weekly contributor to the Let's Go podcast. Weekly podcast coach with Underdog. Inside the NFL. 33rd Team. And he's on Instagram now.
And he's on the dating scene.
He used to make fun of that when he was at the podium back in the day. What's going on here? Does Bill Belichick just have too much time in his hands?
It is a lot of media, right, Mike and Kyle? A lot of media. And it's for a reason. And the reason is that he wants you the NFL fan, a fan of a certain team, a team whose coach may be on the hot seat, he wants you to see him. He wants you to be loud to your team's owner about wanting him. He wants these team owners to watch him, to listen to him, to say, man, he's really smart about football. We all know that, of course, but to see it every single day almost, every single week of an NFL season, when he is dissecting exactly what your current coach, whose seat is warming, what he did wrong and what he could do better and how he could get more out of that player that you have under contract. That's what's going on here. It's going to be an open job interview every single week for Bill Belichick. That's what sources close to him have said. And then also, he's going to be able to, in a way, reinvent himself just a little bit. Hey, maybe I made some mistakes with the Patriots. Maybe I don't want all this personnel say. Maybe I'm going to be okay without some of it. And let me just coach football. We know he's in his early 70s. He's chasing Don Shula's all-time wins record. We understand that he would be a short-timer somewhere else, 2, 3, 4 years as the head coach. And so if he does that, can he set up the team not only for success in the short term, but will they be set up for success in the long term? Once he leaves, will they be in shambles like we thought the Patriots would be until their upset victory on Sunday against the Bengals? So those are all the things that every time that you open up an app or change the channel and you see Bill Belichick sounding smart about sports, it's all about Bill Belichick becoming a head coach in 2025.
Yeah, he's a superstar. Make no mistake about it. I mean, my older brother got to play for the Patriots, and it's not often that you hear about a coach more than the teammates that he has. And he played with friggin' Tom Brady in New England, but it's Bill Belichick Chris wants to talk about all the time. And it's a great point JJ makes. And I think fans, they have such a recency bias, and you need to be relevant. And in order to stay relevant as a football coach that's not on the sideline with a headset, you have to be at a desk, a table in a studio somewhere talking about football. Bill Belichick, one of the brightest minds, and to your point, he's flexing those muscles every single week, and he's like, check this out, man. I can still do this. I can still do this. You want me. There's no question about it.
I will say, I'm not complaining about it. It's sick every time he talks about football. He has insight that truly, especially from a historical perspective, unmatched.
He has polls that are crazy polls.
Jonathan, thank you so much, brother. He'll be
man.
on with us every single Monday, giving us the storylines from the weekend. Really appreciate it. After this,
See you Sunday.
We're going to be breaking down some overreactions from week one. Are they overreactions, though, or are they reality? We'll find out after this. It's overreaction season, and no better time to overreact than after one full game of football. So we're going to go ahead and do so. But we're going to say if it really is an overreaction, or if this is what we can expect the rest of the season. And the first one I want to talk about is the one that's kind of the team of the moment, the Dallas Cowboys. They re-signed their star wide receiver. They re-signed their star quarterback. They pants the Browns on the road. Are they a top 2 team in the NFC?
Hold your horses here, Michael Renner, okay? We haven't even seen the San Francisco 49ers play. They're about to play tonight. You and I picked the Jets. But look, the Niners are the team of the NFC. We saw the Eagles. They look pretty darn good. The Cowboys, they look great on the road. But let's be honest, the Cleveland Browns, they're just not a good football team. They don't have an NFL caliber quarterback, and Dak Prescott's the highest paid player in the National Football League history. That is the tail of the tape right there between the Cowboys and the Browns. I say that's an overreaction that the Cowboys are a top 2 team in the NFC. We don't have enough information yet, Mike.
I'm right there with you. 33 points on the scoreboard, but that's not really indicative of how good this offense was. Now they're facing a great defense, don't get me wrong, but they did struggle to move the football. Dak could have very easily thrown 2 picks to Denzel Ward in the first quarter alone. They ran into Deshaun Watson, farting out one of the worst quarterback performances we saw all weekend. So yeah, I'm going to go overreaction on that one. Hard for me to get quite on board, especially when like 2 of the top teams in the NFC played each other, and it was a hard-fought game on Friday night.
Yep.
Overreaction.
Football's back. I'm so freaking happy, dude.
All right, next overreaction versus reality. Bryce Young, number 1 overall pick back in 2023, comes out of the gate looking like the Bryce Young we saw in 2023, one of the worst quarterback performances we saw this weekend, losing to the New Orleans Saints, on the road, 47-10, throws a pick on his very first drop back, and man, I don't know. Is he a bust?
I hate
Is that an
using
overreaction?
I hate using the word bust. I hate using the word bust because there are such astronomical expectations on these guys who are drafted in the first round, and I really think context is a huge part of this whole thing. For Carolina Panthers, Bryce Young, he hasn't been in a great situation. He's got a new head coach this year, a lot of turnover, and obviously he's not a really big guy. And when you don't have a clean pocket, when you don't have things optimized for you, things go south quickly. He ran into his own guy, fell over, threw a pick on the first play. But I'm not ready to say bust yet on Bryce Young. I think a lot of this stuff could be between the ears, and I'm looking forward to seeing him hopefully pick up the pace a little bit.
I think I'm ready to say bust.
Yeah, but who else was a bust? Give me another bust name. Give me another
Jamarcus
name of
Russell.
a bust. Jamarcus Russell, that's a true bust.
I mean,
You
Baker
know,
Mayfield was kind of a bust compared to what expectations were. When you're the number one overall pick, it's just different. I will say this. I had a take earlier today that, especially given what year it is, 2024, and the new wave of defenses that have swept around the
Okay.
NFL. The McDonald tree, and I'm a tree, but I guess he hasn't much DCs in the NFL, and that came from Baltimore. But that style of defense that's kind of taken over with these sim pressures, with these disguises being the primary factor of that defense, is not showing you what they're actually doing until after the snap. I think his height is a massive issue for that. I think you need to be able
we
to
agree there.
see safeties right at the snap. Height has never been more important at the quarterback position than it is right now. And so because of that,
Should Daniel Jones give him some height?
yeah, well, Daniel Jones has his own issues. But
We're running out of time.
yeah, I do think I think Bryce Young is a bust. All right, other quarterback who was a bust, but looked like a different quarterback altogether this week one. Sam Darnold. Will he experience a career renaissance in Minnesota?
100%. I think it's a perfect situation for him with the tackles, with the head coach, all that. Minnesota, Sam Darnold, looks good on you.
Man, this one's hard for me. But I watched Kevin O'Connell scheme up this offense. And I'm not saying that like anyone could do it, but he makes life easy on his quarterbacks. And he is a very good play caller. And they have a very good running back now in Aaron Jones. Massive upgrade from last year. And oh, by the way, they have one of the best tackle duos in the NFL. When you have one of the best tackle duos in the NFL, that's just something Sam Darnold never had over the course of his career. So I think renaissance, maybe a bit much, but I think we see a career year that puts Sam Darnold firmly in line to get a starting job somewhere
Maybe a
else.
rebrand instead of a renaissance.
I'll rebrand. That's all the rage nowadays anyway. All right, speaking of rebrands, but we're not going to rebrand anytime soon. We're going to talk about quarterbacks and players that may be rebranded in our favorite moments that we saw over the course of the weekend. Kyle, I'm just so fired up that we finally got to talk about football.
Yep.
And we have a whale of a game tonight as the Jets go travel to see the 49ers across the coast. Aaron Rodgers back from that Achilles. Do you have a favorite moment from week one, though?
Favorite moment was just Josh Allen doing Josh Allen things, just being a freak show, extending plays on fourth down, low red area. He calls his own number. You just can't do anything to stop a guy like Josh Allen. That's my favorite moment.
Mine was the other freak show at the quarterback position, Anthony Richardson. Dropping bombs. His average depth of target was 5 yards farther than any other quarterback in the NFL. That Colts offense is going to be a joy to watch. Texas offense is going to be a joy to watch. Football is a joy to watch. That's why we're going to be here on Thursday, breaking down all things NFL, previewing the weekend, and we will be back every single Monday, 1 p.m. Hope you guys will join us. Until next time,
Holla.
keep pushing.